All right, we're back with Thomas Taylor's dissertation on the philosophy of Aristotle. We were going through an argument about the elements derived from motion. So we're arguing for the fifth element from natural motion. Some element has to have the circular motion to account for the motion of the heavenly bodies, and yet the four elements all move up or down or some intermediate state. So I guess the conclusion will be, therefore, there is this fifth element that generates the circular motion by nature. Okay, so we'll pick up where we left off. It is also necessary that such a lation should be first, for the perfect is naturally prior to the imperfect. But the circle ranks among things perfect. No right line, however, is perfect, for neither is an infinite right line perfect, since if it were, it would have a beginning and end, nor any finite right line. All right, so an infinite line lacks completion, so it's not perfect, nor any finite right line, since there is something external to all of them, for each may be increased. Any finite right line ends kind of arbitrarily, and it might as well be extended or not, whereas a circle obviously is intrinsically kind of complete. Hence, if prior motion belongs to the body which is prior by nature, but the motion in a circle is prior to that which is in a right line, and the motion in a right line is the motion of simple bodies, for fire tends upward in a right line, and earthly bodies tend downward to the middle. This being the case, it is necessary that the motion in a circle should be the motion of some one of the bodies which are simple. For we have said that the lation of mixed bodies is according to that which predominates of simple bodies in the mixture. Right. So fire naturally tends upward, earth naturally tends downward, and then the others, I guess, are not per se simple bodies. They're simple in some respects, but not as simple as fire and earth. And so their motions and nature are accounted for by some composition. From these things, therefore, it is evident. Actually, wait, we should read the footnote. So Aristotle, in the 8th book of his Physics, demonstrates that a circular is prior to a rectilinear motion because it is perfect, simple, and properly continued. But here the demonstration is made from perfection. For that the perfect is prior to the imperfect is evident, since imperfect things are produced from the perfect. But that a circular motion is perfect, he shows from the circle being perfect. And he demonstrates that the circle is perfect because it is finite and has an end, which accords with the nature of perfect things. He also shows it from this, that the circle does not receive addition, the form of it remaining, for an addition is made to it so far as it is defective, or is not a complete circle. He shows this, however, not in the circle, but demonstrating that a right line is imperfect, because these things do not happen, but the opposite to a circle, he shows that a circle is perfect. But that every right line is imperfect, he shows first by dividing it into infinite and finite, for every right line is either infinite or finite. Not indeed that there is an infinite right line, since the universe, according to Aristotle, is finite, but because some have fancied that there is, and though there is not, yet a right line may be increased by the fantasy ad infinitum. If therefore an infinite line has not any end or bound, but is indefinite, it will not be perfect. For the perfect is that which is now consummated and bounded, and which has not any defect whatever of things pertaining to itself. But a finite right line has something external, so as to be adapted to be increased, and that which may be increased has not yet received all that pertains to itself, and will therefore be imperfect. But a circle is finite, has an end, and has nothing external, nor can it be increased, the form of it still remaining. Simplicius adds that Alexander shows the circle to be perfect because it has a beginning, middle, and end, the center being the beginning of it, the end the periphery, and the middle the superficies, which is between these. Simplicius, however, justly observes that Aristotle now considers the circular line according to which motion is effected, and not the superficies. Okay. On this account, Aristotle does not intend to show its perfection in the same way as Alexander does, but he demonstrates it from this, that it is finite and receives no addition. But the periphery, indeed, will have a beginning, middle, and end, yet in a different manner, because each of these is everywhere, for any part of it whatever that is assumed may be a beginning, middle, and end. Okay, so like any point on the circle is beginning, middle, end equally, so every point is perfect. But how of every finite line is there something external to it? For the diameter of the universe being finite, what will there be beyond it, since there is nothing beyond the world, as will be demonstrated hereafter? Besides, will it not be absurd that every right line should be imperfect, if there is some form of a right line which ought to participate of perfection, in the same manner as other forms, so that if there are imperfect right lines, it is indeed necessary that there should be some one right line which is entirely perfect. So here's an objection. Alexander, therefore, understands it this way, that we can always conceive a right line capable of being increased, a right line itself not being increased, but one of a certain magnitude. Okay, so the form of the right line is not capable of being increased because it's eternal, but some given magnitude is always imperfect. Hence, the form of a right line, so far as a right line is entirely perfect, both in a small and a great line, but magnitude is perfect in having the whole measure of the intermediate line. But the perfection of it and the perfection according to form are deficient as with reference to a circular form, and the perfection of it, because it does not converge to itself, but as far as pertains to itself is diffused to the unmeasured and the infinite. The quantity of it, however, is bounded by connectedly containing measures. This, therefore, shows that there is something external to every finite line, viz., that so far as pertains to itself and its indefinite diffusion, it has also, always something deficient and capable of receiving addition. Aristotle, therefore, assuming that the more perfect motion is prior, for the perfect, says he, is naturally prior to the imperfect, and the demonstration is that a circle is naturally prior to a right line, as being more perfect. But as the lines on which motion are made, as are the lines on which motion is made, so likewise are the motions. This being the case, he concludes that a circular is naturally prior to a rectilinear motion. He neglects, however, the conclusion as evident, explaining the two continued propositions. Afterwards, wishing to show that the body is naturally prior, which has a circular motion, and that it is simple and different from the four elements, he demonstrates this as follows. If there are two simple motions of simple bodies, viz. The rectilinear and the circular, but the rectilinear belongs to sublunary simple bodies, which are moved upward and downward, it is also necessary that a circular motion should be the motion of some other simple body, which is different from sublunary bodies. For motion always belongs to a body which is moved, and a simple motion to a simple body. Okay, it sort of seems like a silly way to argue for the existence of an element, but it's not like that different from the way physicists have argued for dark matter or dark energy and stuff like that. Okay. For motion always belongs to a body which is moved, and a simple motion to a simple body. For though a composite body is sometimes moved with a simple motion, as a man falling from the top of a house tends to the middle, yet he is carried downward with this motion according to that simple element, viz. Earth, which predominates in the mixture of his corporeal frame. Some, however, as we are informed by Alexander, have doubted the truth of what is here asserted by Aristotle, viz., that the perfect is naturally prior to the imperfect. For if the world is more perfect than each of the things from which it is composed, but the more perfect is prior, and the prior is also more simple, the world also will be prior to and more simple than the things from which it is composed. But it has not a subsistence, says Alexander, prior to its parts, nor does it appear to be more simple than its parts, being composed from them. Alexander, therefore, yielding to these arguments, endeavors to solve the doubt as follows: that the world is said to be more perfect as being more comprehensive, and that a circular is more perfect than a rectilinear motion, and a circle than a right line, not as containing, but considered according to species. Okay. In things that are separate, therefore, says he, it is true that the more perfect is prior and more simple, but this is no longer true in wholes and parts. Okay, if we're dealing with totally separate things, the simpler is going to be prior, but when we're talking about wholes and parts, there's a different logic, I guess. For the whole, says he, is more perfect than its proper parts, and is prior to them both by nature and essence, but is not prior in time. For that which, besides being simple, is also perfect, this is likewise prior in time. Okay, okay. So wholes are more perfect by nature, and they're prior by nature and essence. And I could, I guess, see that where a part, insofar as a part, involves the definition of the whole of which it is a part. But then you can just flip that around for the whole. But anyway, the whole includes all the parts, and so it's lacking nothing in its definition, whereas the part is lacking something, and so to define the part by nature, you have to make reference to the whole. To define the whole, you do have to make reference to the part, but the part is part of the whole, and so it can be included in the definition without reference to something external. So that kind of makes sense, but then it's not prior in time. For that which, besides being simple, is also perfect, this is likewise prior in time, but that doesn't apply to wholes and parts, apparently. But that a circular is prior to a rectilinear motion, not in essence only, but also in time, Aristotle shows in the 8th book of his Physics, and such is the solution of Alexander. Simplicius, however, well observes that perhaps priority is not to be assumed according to time. For there was not a time when a circular motion was, but a rectilinear motion was not, though the former is always the cause of the latter. Nor still more when the circle was, a right line was not. But priority is to be assumed according to nature. For Aristotle clearly says, quote, that the perfect is naturally prior to the imperfect, and again, that a prior motion is the motion of a body which is prior by nature. The world, therefore, being more perfect than its parts, is naturally prior to them, as Alexander also acknowledges, but it is also more simple. For if it is prior by nature, it is more united, Taylor's double footnote, for as all things originate from the one, multitude, which is nearer to, is more united than that which is more remote from the one, because the one produces the similar prior to the dissimilar, but that which is nearer to the one is also prior. Yeah, so what's prior is closer to the one, so things that are more united are prior. Okay, so for if it is prior by nature, it is more united, but that which is more united is more allied to the one, and a thing of this kind is more simple. Okay, so arguing for the simplicity just from the priority of the whole. We, however, not looking to the united wholeness of the world, according to which it is one animal, or an image of the intellectual animal resident in the intellect of the artificer of the universe, but directing our attention to its separated multitude, and calling this the world, we think that the part is more simple than the whole, and that the parts are prior to the whole. For the whole, indeed, from its proper unity, produces in itself its own separated multitude. So the world as a whole is somehow more simple than it appears to us, viewing the separated multitude. So the separated multitude of the world is a product of the world, but the world in itself is far more simple. Yeah, I like that. That'd be like, I don't know, the wave function description of the entire universe being more unified and then collapse, classical, space-time. We have a separated multitude, but that's something produced from the world itself, which is intrinsically a more unified thing. So, okay. We're back up here with Aristotle. For we have said that the relation of mixed bodies is according to that which predominates of simple bodies in the mixture. From these things, therefore, it is evident that another essence of body is naturally adapted to exist, besides the compositions of bodies which are here, and that it is more divine than, and prior to, all of these. Footnote 3. Aristotle here adds a common conclusion to what has been said. For those things being admitted, it is evident from them that there is some other simple body besides the four elements, viz., a circular body more divine than and prior to them by nature. For if it has been demonstrated that circular motion is simple, and is naturally prior to rectilinear motion, but the motion of a simple body is simple and prior to the motion of a right line, and if that which is simple and prior by nature is also more divine, it is evident that this conclusion is deduced from what has been previously admitted. Aristotle. Besides, if it is admitted that all motion is either according to or contrary to nature, and that the motion which is contrary to nature to one thing is according to nature to another, as in the motions upward and downward, for one of these to fire and the other to earth is according to and contrary to nature, if this be admitted, it is necessary that the motion in a circle, since it is to these contrary to nature, should be something else according to nature. Okay. Footnote 4. Not only from what has been said, it is concluded that the body which is moved circularly is different from the four elements, but this is also inferred from the arguments now proposed. The first of which, according to Alexander, is as follows. Every natural simple motion is either naturally inherent in the simple body which is moved with this motion, or it is inherent contrary to nature. But that which is inherent in anything contrary to nature is inherent in something else according to nature. Well, that's interesting. So any violent motion then for one body is the natural motion of another. I don't know if we can universalize that. I don't know that Aristotle, he kind of said that. I don't know if he said it in a way that would like universalize. Besides, if it is admitted that all motion is either contrary to or according to nature, and that motion which is contrary to nature to one thing is according to nature to another. Okay. So it's a little bit ambiguous. He's not necessarily committing himself to the universal proposition that all motions are all violent motions according to one body are natural motions according to another, but at least we're using that for these purposes. Okay. For this it is for a thing to be moved with a physical motion contrary to nature, to be moved with the motion which is natural to some other thing, and not according to its own proper nature, since every natural motion is the motion of something which is moved naturally. If therefore a circular motion is natural, and a natural motion, if it is inherent in anything contrary to nature, is inherent in something else according to nature, it is evident that a circular motion, though it should be supposed to be inherent in the four elements contrary to nature, there will nevertheless be some body besides these to which to be moved circularly is natural. Yeah, I mean, to universalize that seems to lead to pretty odd conclusions. Like, you can take any arbitrary shape and then have a motion according to that arbitrary shape and say, well, for this body, this arbitrary zigzag pattern or squiggly line pattern is violent. It's not the natural motion. But therefore, some other body has this as its natural motion, which is clearly absurd. But I think Alexander committed himself more to that. He drew more out of Aristotle's argument than was necessary. But we'll just keep going. Farther still, if lation in a circle is to anything according to nature, it is evident that there will be some body among simple and first bodies which will be adapted to be moved naturally in a circle, in the same manner as fire is moved upward naturally and earth downward. But if the bodies which are moved in a circle about the middle are moved contrary to nature, it is wonderful and perfectly absurd that this motion alone should be continued and perpetual, when at the same time it is contrary to nature. For in other things, such as are contrary to nature, appear to be most swiftly corrupted. Okay, well, that is a better argument. The circular motion of the heavens ought to be the natural motion, because violent motions we see quickly degrade back into the natural motions of those bodies. Footnote 5. From division, Aristotle again shows the same thing, that the body which is moved with a circular motion is different from the four elements. But what he says is in effect as follows. A circular motion, because it is a natural and simple motion, is inherent in some natural and simple body, either according to or contrary to nature. And he employs an abundant division, because it is evident that this motion, being natural, is entirely inherent in something according to nature. But in consequence of the division being inevitable, he at the same time introduces the problem multifariously. Here also he adds the argument when he says, if lation in a circle is to anything according to nature, since it is simple in the first, which has been demonstrated, but every motion is always the motion of some body which is moved, if this be the case, there will be some body among simple and first bodies which is naturally adapted to be moved with this motion, and which is different from the bodies that are moved in a right line. For as they are moved in a right line, so this is moved in a circle. For if a circular motion is unnatural to the body in which it is inherent, or in other words, if those things which are moved circularly are moved contrary to nature, it is wonderful and perfectly irrational that a circular motion, being unnatural, should alone be continued and perpetual, which it is demonstrated to be in the 8th book of the Physics. For that is wonderful, which very much deviates from the usual course of nature. But it is perfectly irrational that anything contrary to nature should be the cause of a continued and perpetual motion. For in other things, whatever is contrary to nature is seen to be most rapidly corrupted. For every nature labors when it operates not according to its own form. For things which are moved naturally are moved by a power naturally energizing from itself, and which is coexistent with them. And hence they are moved without labor. Okay, so natural motions are easy, violent motions are laborious. But things which are moved contrary to nature rather suffer than energize, not being moved by a natural power, but being externally impelled by violence. On this account, natural bodies are not in want of rest, because they energize according to their own nature. So to move according to one's own nature can be counted a type of rest, I guess. But the bodies of animals are perfectly in want of rest, for psychical motions, or the motions belonging to soul, are not the natural motions of their bodies, which are moved as instruments by the souls that use them. Okay. So by rest there, he means kind of a psychological rest or ease. Obviously not literal being stationary. Aristotle. Hence, if that which is moved in a circle is fire, as some assert, this motion is no less contrary to nature to it than the motion downward. For we see that the motion of fire is from the middle in a right line. So up from earth, which is the middle. And let's see what the footnote says. 6. Aristotle, having shown that a circular motion is not contrary to nature to the body which is moved in a circle, if it is continued and perpetual, shows in common, employing what has been before demonstrated, that fire is not a body with a circular motion. But he shows this as follows. If fire is a body which is circularly moved, it follows that a circular motion is inherent in it, contrary to nature, no less than a tendency downward. But if a circular motion is not inherent, contrary to nature, in that which is moved in a circle, if it is continued and perpetual, the body which is circularly moved is not fire. Okay. So argument's a little bit confused. So it actually is just an assertion that fire doesn't naturally move in a circle. We don't have to analyze the argument. I think it's a bad argument, but whatever. We can assume it's true regardless. I was curious whether there would be a comment on like other opinions about the motion of fire, because we've seen from somebody that fire rises up to basically the firmament and then moves circularly and circulates around the earth. But that's being left out for now, so just move on. From all these reasons, therefore, anyone syllogizing may believe that there is a certain other body different from the bodies which are here and which surround us, that it is separate from these and has a nature by so much more honorable than as it is more distant from sublunary bodies. Okay, so we've demonstrated the ether in this chain of arguments. Footnote 7. Faith is twofold, the one without demonstration being irrationally produced, and which some men possess about things the most absurd, but the other being after demonstration and replete with evidence. This faith also is accurate, cannot be confuted, and is allied to the truth of beings. Okay. So, two types of faith. The latter, demonstrated faith, is accurate, can't be refuted, allied to the truth. Since, therefore, what has been above said has been asserted with demonstration, Aristotle very properly says that anyone syllogizing may believe. But a faith of this kind excels in scientific knowledge with vital sympathy. Hence Aristotle philosophically and properly uses the words may believe because, together with the firm knowledge of more divine natures, vital sympathy is coexcited. The words also may believe may be considered as implying that he syllogizes from hypotheses, and it is evident that as is the relation of hypotheses to evidence, such also will be the conclusions deduced from them to faith. Okay. So it is a dialectical argument, and so it's a kind of faith rather than firm knowledge, maybe. And when Simplicius, I think, here uses the term demonstration, he's not using it in Aristotle's sense. Because if it was demonstrated, it wouldn't be a dialectical syllogism. But if it's from hypotheses, it is a dialectical syllogism. So there's some inconsistency if we assume demonstration to be used in the Aristotelian sense there. So I assume it's not. The words also may be considered as implying that he syllogizes from hypotheses. So, but also we're not committed to the idea that he is syllogizing from hypotheses. Demonstrations syllogize from axioms that are self-evident. But obviously that's like, how do you know if something is actually self-evident? So it's not always immediately evident the difference between a dialectical syllogism and a demonstrative syllogism. And it is evident that as is the relation of hypotheses to evidence, such also will be the conclusions deduced from them to faith. Okay. So he's contrasting hypotheses to, I guess, the kind of evidence that leads to demonstrations. And then, okay. Sort of not obvious, because there's no other term than faith. Is it faith versus knowledge? Or, that's all right. Anyway, we'll keep going. But as Simplicius beautifully adds, it is better to say that faith everywhere imparts that which results from necessary conclusions, and that especially in the discussions of divine concerns, the vital sympathy arising from faith after demonstration not only produces stability of real knowledge, but also union with the objects of knowledge, which is the end of human blessedness. For anagogic love proceeds, exciting in the soul the desire of divine beauty, the true unfolding of it into light by those who are worthy to receive it follows, and faith succeeds in the last place, imparting a firm establishment in and union with the divine object itself. So this seems interesting, but it is like very confusedly written, exactly what this faith is, and it seems like this is something that happens after demonstration. The other being after demonstration replete with evidence. So the faith that you have after something has been demonstrated is superior, obviously, to the kind of naive faith you might have in something. And that faith, imparts a firm establishment in and union with the divine object itself. But that by how much the more the celestial bodies are separated from things in generation and corruption, by so much the more they excel in dignity of essence is evident. But these last are expelled to the extremity of the universe, but the heavens are allotted the summit of the corporeal sphere. Okay. We'll go back to the Aristotle text. Since, however, of the things above asserted, some are supposed, but others are demonstrated, it is evident that not every body has either levity or gravity. It is also necessary that it should be supposed what we say the heavy and the light are, sufficiently for our present purpose, but again, more accurately when we make the essence of these the subject of consideration. Okay, so we can assume a basic knowledge of heavy and light for these purposes, although we'll look at them more closely, I guess, right now. Let the heavy, then, be that which is naturally adapted to tend to the middle, but the light, that which is naturally adapted to be moved from the little. And let the most heavy be that which subsists under all the bodies that tend downward, but the most light, that which rises above all bodies which tend upward. But it is necessary that everything which tends either upward or downward should either have levity or gravity, or both, but not with reference to the same thing. For things heavy and light refer to each other, as for instance, air to water and water to earth. Okay. So it's like levity and gravity are relative properties. And read this kind of long footnote. Footnote 8. Since all doctrine and every rationative discipline is produced from pre-subsisting knowledge, as Aristotle teaches us in his Posterior Analytics, it is necessary that certain things should be supposed prior to demonstrations, some as being credible from themselves, others as having been previously demonstrated, and others as things to be demonstrated. This being the case, certain foundations are here laid down, and certain things are also demonstrated. Certain things indeed are presupposed, viz. That there are two simple lines, the right line and the circumference of a circle, and that the motion from the middle is upward, the motion to the middle downward, and the motion about the middle circular. Also that one motion is contrary to one, and that there is one natural motion of every simple body. But of the foundations, it is demonstrated that there are two simple motions, viz. The circular and rectilinear, that the motions of simple bodies are simple, and that simple motions are the motions of simple bodies. Okay, so these things, Simplicity is saying, were demonstrated. Some others were presupposed. For this is demonstrated from the division of motions and bodies, and from appropriate adaptation. It is also demonstrated from the things supposed, and from the demonstrated foundations, that besides the four sublunary simple bodies, there is another fifth body, to which a circular motion is natural, and that this is more perfect prior to, and naturally more honorable than other bodies. These things being supposed and demonstrated, Aristotle says, it follows that not every body has either gravity or levity, because there's the circular motion. For if the heavy and the light, from the proper definition of them, appear to belong to a right-lined motion, but it has been demonstrated that the body which is moved circularly is different from those which are moved in a right line, and if different, the motion in a right line can neither happen to it contrary nor according to nature, it evidently follows that not every body has gravity or levity. But this contributes to his demonstrating that a celestial body is without generation, is incorruptible, without increase, without diminution, and without alteration. For if it had gravity or levity, there would be some motion contrary to its motion. And if this were the case, there would be something contrary to it, which would be moved naturally with a motion contrary to it. But if this took place, it would be generated from contraries and corrupted into contraries. If, however, it has neither gravity nor levity, neither, in short, will it be moved in a right line, according to which there is contrariety, but it will alone be moved in a circle. Okay. But couldn't you say the contrary would be the other way, like clockwise or counterclockwise? We can ignore that. But it has been shown that there is not any motion contrary to a circular motion, except going the other way in that circle. And hence it is evident that the body which is circularly moved will not have anything contrary to it, so far as it is neither generated from anything else, nor corrupted into anything else. It is necessary, therefore, that it should neither have gravity nor levity. At the same time, also, Aristotle previously assumes that it will neither be moved upward nor downward, which is equivalent to its not being moved with a motion which has contrariety. Okay. And again, I don't think that's strictly true, but fine, it's not going to be moved other than in a circle. Afterwards, having shown that to a circular motion with which it is moved, there is not any motion contrary, it will follow that there is not anything contrary to it. And from this, it necessarily follows that it is neither generated nor corrupted, but all the rest is consequent to this. It is also necessary, says he, that it should be supposed what we say the heavy and the light are, because it is not his principal intention at present to discuss the heavy and the light, as in the fourth book. Okay, so we'll get deeper into that. Here he's just treating it briefly, and it seems like he classes it with the relative properties. as in the fourth book, where he particularly considers them. But he now requires this hypothesis in order to show that the body which is moved in a circle is without generation and corruption from its not having either gravity or levity, as he sufficiently manifests in the text. But he defines what the heavy and the light, and also what the most heavy and the most light are. For since of things which tend downward, one thing, as earth, proceeds as far as to the center, viz., as far as to that which is most downward, but another thing proceeds as far as to the earth. And since of things which tend upward, one thing, fire, proceeds as far as to the highest place, viz., as far as to the lunar sphere, but another proceeds as far as to fire, hence the one is very properly heavy, but the other most heavy, and the one is light, but the other most light. If therefore the heavy is that which tends downward, and the light that which tends upward, and these are the definitions of the heavy and the light, it is evident that, conversely, that which tends upward or downward has necessarily gravity or levity. And since of the upward there is something which is not perfectly upward, but which has something of the downward, as the place under fire, and since of the downward again, there is something which is not perfectly downward, as the place of water, the bodies which are moved to these places have justly both gravity and levity. They have not both these, however, with reference to the same thing, for it is not possible at the same time to be heavier and lighter than the same thing, but the heavy and the light pertain to these relatively. For air, so it's not that it's always a relative property. The most heavy is unqualifiedly heavy, although arguably you could still treat it as a relative. But for air indeed is light with reference to water, but heavy with reference to fire. And water is light with reference to earth, yet not with reference to air, for compared with this, it is heavy. Hence, these are neither properly heavy, nor properly light, nor properly simple. But fire is light and properly simple, and earth is heavy and properly simple, the former rising above everything which tends on high, and the latter subsiding under everything which tends downward. Hence, if the middle elements are not perfectly simple, the discussion of simple bodies will not properly pertain to them, nor do they act well who endeavor from these to change the above-mentioned opinions about simple bodies. Okay. It is, however, impossible that the body which is moved in a circle should have either gravity or levity, for it is not possible that it can be moved either to the middle or from the middle, either according to or contrary to nature. For lation in a right line is not natural to it, since there is one motion of each of the simple bodies, so that it will be the same with some one of the bodies which are moved in a right line. But if it is moved contrary to nature, if indeed the motion downward is contrary to nature, the motion upward will be according to nature. But if the motion upward is contrary, the motion downward will be according to nature. For we have supposed of contrary motions that the thing to which one of these motions is contrary to nature has the other according to nature. Footnote 9. Aristotle, using the assigned definitions of the heavy and the light, or rather the conversions of the definitions, shows that it is impossible for the body which is moved in a circle to have either gravity or levity. For if it had, it would have it either according to or contrary to nature. But he demonstrates that neither of these is possible, employing for this purpose two axioms: that there is one natural motion of every simple body, and that to the body to which one of the contrary motions is contrary to nature, the other is according to nature. Yeah, so it's clarifying that it's either natural or violent idea. Let me read this last sentence again. That there is one natural motion of a very simple body, fine, and that to the body to which one of the contrary motions is contrary to nature, the other is according to nature. And I think that also doesn't make sense, because you could have contrary motions that are left-right. And if therefore left is contrary to nature of fire, well then right is according to nature, but that's not true. So This seems just kind of wacky, but let's see here. For we have supposed of contrary motions that the thing to which one of these motions is contrary to nature has the other according to nature. Yeah, which is just not true. It's like in certain cases, in up and down, if it's not naturally moved upward, well, then it ought to be moved downward by nature. But even that is clearly not true according to what Aristotle himself has said, because circular motion is neither up or down. So I feel like this is badly stated, and Simplicius just accepts it kind of bizarrely. I'm going to stick with this is, I mean, obviously, all these conclusions are false. So there's some serious errors in reasoning going on. I guess one of them would be Aristotle's main error, perhaps, is considering circular motion a simple motion. Or something. I guess rotation is a simple motion, you could call that. But rotation is different from orbiting, I guess. Anyway, we'll keep going. Since, however, the whole and the part tend naturally to the same thing, as for instance, all the earth and a small clod, in the first place it will happen that the body which is moved in a circle has neither any levity nor gravity. For if it had, it would be able to tend according to its own nature either to the middle or from the middle. In the next place, it is impossible that it should be moved with local motion, either by being drawn upward or downward, for neither it nor any one of its parts can be moved with any other motion, either according to or contrary to nature, since there is the same reason of the whole and its parts. Okay, I think we will pick up with this footnote 1 next time, and we'll leave it there. So yeah, some parts of this text have been more edifying than others. I prefer the stuff that could in some way be considered true. I don't think this aspect of Aristotle's cosmology can be defended. So anyway, that's it for today. We'll pick this back up tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Take care.